This is Victor Linkletter versus Victor G. Walker on June 7, 1965. We have several cases that led to the Linkletter versus Walker trial held in 1965. We have these cases: Weeks versus the United States in 1914, Wolf versus the people of the state of Colorado in 1949, Reck versus Plate in 1961, and Fay versus Noya in 1963. And they all lead you to a very interesting question before the court: whether the provisions of the exclusionary rule found in Mapp versus Ohio should be applied retroactively or for cases in the past. First, we have Victor Linkletter, and he was arrested on suspicion of burglary. While he was being arrested, the police suspected that he was involved in more crimes of breaking and entering. The police confiscated his keys while he was at the police station, and without a warrant, the police searched his home and his workplace and took some of his personal items. Now, what you're seeing here is a huge violation of the Fourth Amendment. No unreasonable search and seizure. Well, we think that, and so does the Supreme Court. But the District Court of Louisiana seems to think a little bit differently. They believe that because the officers had a reasonable cause for Linkletter's arrest under Louisiana law, their so-called unreasonable search and seizure was in fact completely reasonable, and Linkletter was found guilty of burglary by the Louisiana District Court and affirmed by the Supreme Court of Louisiana just 9 months later. Then we have the case of 1961, Mapp versus Ohio. In this case, the Supreme Court held that all evidence obtained by searches and seizures in violation of the Constitution is, by the Fourth Amendment, inadmissible in a state court. The decision created chaos in the courts. All the decisions made in cases prior to Mapp versus Ohio became questionable. So, should Linkletter have been found guilty of crime if the evidence the police obtained was found through an unreasonable search and seizure? This became the major question before the court. On June 7, 1965, that question was answered. Now, we have Linkletter and his lawyer, Yule A. Screws, Jr. versus Victor G. Walker and his lawyer, Teddy W. Earhart, Jr., at the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. I'm sorry. Chief Justices include William Brennan, Tom Clark, John Marshall Harlan II, Potter Stewart, Earl Warren, Brian White, Hugo Lafayette Black, William Douglas, and Arthur Goldberg. The decision ended up being a 7-2 split. Decision stating that, with words of decision, in the Constitution, there are no circumstances that require retroactive implementation of the exclusionary rule. Yeah, that. This means that Linkletter was found guilty before and will remain guilty, along with all the other people in the cases that had decisions made prior to Mapp versus Ohio that had the same trouble with the exclusionary rule. So, in the end, we have a long struggle with Victor Linkletter, but sorry, sir, you are just guilty. Just because a decision is made after you were found guilty doesn't mean that you get the long end of the stick. Sorry, man, you should have waited a few years before you became a thief. Guilty! Illegal!